This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. Today, we have an incredible guest that you and I got to meet with a little bit back. And I think for both of us, just blew our socks off with her, like just knowledge and wisdom and leadership and all the things. Jenn was amazing. So
Today's going to be a fun treat.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest? Super
Absolutely.
excited.
Well, guys, today we are really excited to share with you our new friend, Jenn Daniels. Jenn is a mom of four. She is a CEO. She's a former mayor, and she's a board member of a variety of organizations here in Arizona. So, Jenn, welcome to the Daily Leader.
Thank you, and congratulations on all of the babies. I always joke that my favorite thing about myself right now is that I'm not pregnant, but congratulations.
Yes.
I did my part. I contributed 4.
You did.
So, yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's start off by hearing your story. Tell us about family, kids. Tell us about your work.
Yeah.
Tell us about the roles that you're in.
Happy to, and really grateful that I get to visit with you guys today. And I'm excited to share whatever I can with your listeners as well. So I grew up in the Bay Area, ended up in Arizona in 2000, and just worked in finance for a couple of years, and then started my family. And I have 4 kids. They're old now. I've got 2 full-blown adults, 1 adult in training, and then one who thinks she's an adult. She's my 13-year-old and my youngest. So 21, 19, 17, and 13. I think parenting is so awful. I actually really dislike parenting.
I was not expecting that.
No,
I was
caught
not
me by
expecting
surprise
that.
But
too.
I
Go on.
love being a mom. And to me, parenting and mothering are 2 completely different skill sets.
All right, tell us about
Yeah,
that.
Well,
let's just dive into that real
there's
quick.
a lot to unpack there probably, but parenting is where you're responsible and where you have to nurture and guide, and you have to create rules that people have to listen to and adhere to. But mothering is more, I just get to love you exactly where you are, and that part feels a lot more natural to me. So I always joke, I really dislike parenting, but I really love mothering. And if I could figure out sort of the fine line between those 2 things, I'd probably strike the right balance at my house. So,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it talked about that way.
No, I feel like your kid, do you have like rules? Do you have a lot of rules?
So
or is it like pretty low key?
We have rules. There are rules, but there's nothing that you will tell your children after the age of about 15 that they haven't already heard at least a dozen times.
Sure.
Okay,
And
good to know.
so there comes a point where it's like, I can tell you this again, but now I'm lecturing you.
Yeah.
And how well did we all do when we were lectured as teenagers, right?
So well.
So let's put the relationship in front of the rules at that point. So my parenting style, I always joke, is sort of choose your own adventure, meaning, hey kid, at 16, you're in charge of your own destiny. If you don't like the page that you're on, you guys remember Choose Your Own Adventure books when we were kids?
Yes.
Go back a few pages and figure out what you need to course correct on and choose the new path. And so it's a lot of questioning, sort of the different method.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And you know what I'm thinking of is our friend and someone else we've had on the podcast a couple times named Shane Kuiper, and he has 7 kids. And so that is what I would consider a lot of kids.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all 10 and under now, or 9 and under. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Anyway, go on.
But he also has a school bus.
He does. That he's converted into a really cool camper. And they all just, it's not a huge school bus, it's one of the shorter ones, but they all pile in and go on vacation.
Yeah.
But parenting is incredible.
Yeah.
And I think that like even with like right now we have 2, we have another one coming at the end of this week. And everyone keeps making the zone defense joke, like everywhere I go. It's like, oh, you're going to zone defense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, the zone defense joke. I mean, like, yeah, I know. I don't even know what that means. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be awesome. I have no idea. So advice as I move to zone defense.
Oh,
What would you be thinking about if you were Brad and Becca?
You know, I had an experience. I was at Costco. I had 3 boys under the age of 4. So
That's amazing.
thank goodness for Costco shopping carts.
Were you a leash parent? Can we just? Not that that's
My
wrong.
parents
I'm
were.
just curious.
So I used to be very critical of mothers that had their children on leashes until I
Right.
had my third. And then
And
I
then
was
you were
like,
like,
I get it now. Like,
"Give me
well,
the
he was
leash."
a wanderer. Like, he would totally wander off. But I was in Costco. I still remember wearing the baby, because that's back when we had like the baby born things, wearing the baby. And then the two toddlers are in the shopping cart. And a sweet old man came up to me
Oh, no.
and he said,
Oh, no.
wow, it really looks like you have your hands full. And I just looked at him, and the poor guy, I was like, are you offering to help me? Because I could really use some help right now. And I think he backed away real slowly and probably hasn't approached any parent with young children since. It was just one of those moments. So prepare yourself for the moments when all three of them are crying at the same time, and prepare yourself for the moment
Me
when
too.
yeah. when you just lose it. Yeah. So
I
just
love
be
that.
ready.
Okay.
It's all coming at you.
I like
good.
that. I like the take though between motherhood and parenting.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's a great fatherhood sort of analogy too. It just
Yeah.
hasn't been my
Yeah, we'll
experience.
figure that out.
Well, because you are right that there, if you divide it that way, at least, I mean, some people I think probably really do like rules.
Oh yeah.
I'm not one of them, but
you could use some more rules.
I
in
could
your
all,
life,
yeah,
honestly,
I
too,
could
right?
use a lot
I
of
think
rules.
we're lacking some rules.
That is true. Yeah, my rules didn't matter. But if you divide it up that way, that's kind of an interesting perspective of, okay, here's the piece that's not my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and here's the piece that I actually really enjoy.
Right.
And this part is probably really essential, but it sounds like you have tailored your parenting style to a way that really jives with who you are.
Out of necessity. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
really leads them. So I think that's really cool.
I tailored it in a way that aligned with my own values.
Yeah.
Which is love first.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
Love first, and then the rules are secondary, right?
Right. Right.
Interesting. I
I
like that.
feel like that's such an interesting. Okay, we're gonna break scripture for a second. Thoughts on that as it relates to leadership in general? Because parenting is a form of leadership, right? You're doing all kinds of leadership in your career.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on like how you've maybe tailored your leadership in that same line of thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually used to joke that being a mayor was an awful lot like being the mother of toddlers.
Just 200,000 toddlers.
Yeah, it's just like,
No, it's mostly about my counsel.
Okay.
It didn't have a lot to do with the residents. But my leadership style is very much about people. It has nothing to do with me. It's a temporary role in most cases where I get to make sure that every interaction I have with somebody, they feel heard, seen, and valued. And those are the three things, and that's it. And if I can do that, it means that I can respectfully disagree. It means that I can respond to the need.
Yeah.
It means, like, there's all these things that will come after. But before any action is taken as a leader, I have to hear, see, and value the people that I'm leading or working with or alongside.
Yeah.
And if I can't do that, I really have no business being in that leadership role.
Yeah, I feel like that is it's kind of expanding on. So it's, what is it? The 7 habits of highly successful people, right?
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
seek to understand before seeking to be understood.
Right.
And you've kind of added to that a little bit
Yeah.
of, wanting to make sure you're loving on them and hearing them and doing all of that. But I just think that that's really neat. My guess would be the story that I make up about that is, when that is the case, then whatever it is that we have to talk about probably seems, I don't know, less, I want to say frightening, but that's not it. But it's like that kind of dissipates and you can kind of come together on common ground. Is that true?
Yeah,
Like,
not only that, but it also shifts a little of the responsibility back to the other individual, which I think is, again, another important element of leadership. Like, I can do so much, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, my ability stops and yours begins. So it allows us to get to the place of, how would you like this solved? What's your contribution to the solution? I'm more than happy to help implement, collect data. I'm more than happy to do all those important elements that are responsible data points for an actual decision to be made.
Yeah.
But at some point, I could come up with a solution that doesn't meet someone else's need, and then therefore I have not done my job. So how can I get the other individuals, whether it's somebody I'm working with or somebody that's come to me with an acute problem that they need help solving, how can I help them contribute to the solution? Because once they're bought in, the solution is that much better.
Yeah. So
that's really wise.
So I just always like to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So when somebody buys in because I've said, hey, I actually care about you, I hear you, I understand, then it's way easier for them to kind of contribute, and you don't necessarily have to
Absolutely.
solve the issue for them.
No. No. And it's hard in local government because there are a lot of things. This is my least favorite answer was, I'm sorry, that's how, like the responsibility for that is another level of government. For example, as a local leader, I don't have anything to do with immigration or, something that would be like a federal act. So having to say to an individual, like, I don't have any control over the solution, but can I stand in it with you for a minute?
Yeah.
And I think that's the hearing and seeing them, and then recognizing the humanity that they have within them is just a hugely important component.
There's an author named Timothy Clark. He wrote a book recently called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. If either of you heard of this one or seen this one, so I would really recommend it to you and to our listeners. But he talks about basically everything that you just said. The only difference is he found it from research and you found it from just getting out in there and grinding it out.
Doing it wrong, actually, is how I found out most of the lessons that I've learned.
Yeah.
Okay, don't do it like this, do it like this. But, the 4th stage of psychological safety is this idea of challenger safety. And it's what all of us aspire to on a team. If you have any shred of competition in your spirit, you're like, what you want to do is go out, you want to work as hard as you can, and you want to leave it all on the field in effort to achieve whatever goal you've set out to. And the reality is that we cannot get to a place of challenger safety, the ability to basically go all out at what we're pursuing, unless we actually believe that the people we're competing with are for us, that we belong with them on the team.
The worthy opponent.
Yeah, I love that phrase. We don't necessarily know that we're the worthy opponent until we believe that we're supposed to be playing the game together. And so those are such wise insights. We can go back to the script now if you want, but I didn't want to miss an opportunity to.
No, I like off script. Off script's my favorite, mostly because it stresses you out. I see it.
I get a little jittery when we go off script because I'm like,
oh my gosh, pivot.
Less prepared. What's Taylor going to say?
Friends. Yeah. That he's a loose cannon, that Taylor guy.
Speaking of Friends, who's your favorite Friends character?
Oh gosh, great question.
Like
Did you watch
we
watch
you
Friends?
guys,
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with TV.
What?
I know.
I love
Like
this.
None?
Just maybe like 4 or 5 channels.
Yeah, the regular like PBS.
Good for
Yeah,
you.
I
or
can.
whatever it is.
That's probably why
quote-
you're so successful in life.
I think so. I can quote and sing almost every musical that was ever recorded, though. Singing in the Rain,
Okay.
Sound of Music.
Because that's what was on.
I mean, we had VHS
The
tapes.
hills
I'm
are
old, you guys.
alive.
All right. No, I remember you had a solo machine for rewinding, the
You didn't
the
ever
Only
use
the
that.
wealthy
I had
kids
that.
had that.
Oh yeah, we had the
Oh,
little
yeah.
race car. Oh wait, the wealthy kids.
Yeah, well,
I didn't feel like I
okay.
fit that bill until now.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know. We must have been loaded.
We just had the actual machine. It went a lot slower than
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Than-
Yeah.
I guess we
Than the
mostly did,
standalone
too.
rewinder.
Yeah.
That thing was just ripped. It was like,
Yeah.
zzz, and then you were ready to watch
Can't
it
believe
again.
it didn't tear
You
through
know?
it. Did Andy Griffith, was that on? Did you watch
I'm
that?
right after Andy.
Okay.
So
Okay. Not like time period wise. I just know like reruns.
Yeah,
and that's
no.
my wife was big on
Yeah.
Andy Griffith.
yeah.
They were the same way. I didn't really.
Jeez,
have
Taylor,
time.
you
Didn't
might
watch
as well
a lot
ask her
of
her
TV.
age. Come on.
God,
Have
Brad.
some respect.
you
This is
know
why
what?
we
I
don't
just
go
had
off
a
script.
birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Yeah, I just had a birthday last Friday. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I'm 45.
27.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm 45. It's a great year.
Man, it is a great
I'm
year.
loving 45. I'm loving my 40s actually.
Are
Why?
you?
What makes it different? Do you feel like from your 30s?
Just a recognition that like I'm not one of the new kids anymore. I actually like the sort of I'm the middle group. We have this younger group of workers that like we get to lead and mentor and guide. For those that want it, they don't have to take it. And
Oh,
now
they
I'm
do.
part of like the seasoned
You're like the cool
leaders.
aunt right now.
Okay, my whole goal in life is to be the cool eccentric aunt.
Gosh,
Yeah.
good for you.
And
yeah.
I'm well on my way. My nieces and nephews very much are like Aunt Jen
You get them all
rocks.
hopped
yeah.
up on candy
Yep.
and then just hand them
Yep.
back.
Yep.
Like,
And I
hey,
tell them all the
sugar
things
high.
that their parents won't say
That's right.
explicitly to
Yeah.
them.
Oh, that's
so,
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all need that.
Ugh, that's what I do for your kids. Uncle Taylor does that for your kids. I just
Uncle
want you to
Taylor.
know. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have had a lot of experiences that we would like to hear about. If you want to, do you want to unpack a little bit more of like your career? I know we could spend all day on your family, which
We
is
jumped
fantastic.
in. Yeah. No.
Because
Fast forward, I had a business 2003, 2007. It sort of fizzled out, which was good timing because I had just had my third son. Turns out you can't work 22 hours a day and be a good mom. That was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And
Math on
so
that
it was a
doesn't
great
work.
time to not. And then about a year after that, I decided to run for office, which was totally outside of my wheelhouse. I was not a political science major. I didn't have a law degree. I like all the things that like are normally. I had a lot of people that told me, you know, why don't you go volunteer first? Why don't you, be on some boards or commissions? So glad that I didn't know then what I know now, because I would not have probably felt like I would try it without sort of that background and information. So 3 cheers for all the people who just say, I'm going to try it and see what happens, because
That sounds like the Daily Leader podcast.
Yeah. So
The leap is
made
good.
you, what was that change? Why were you like, I'm going to run for mayor?
So no, I ran for council first. So I was on
Okay,
council
council
for
first.
8 years.
Okay.
And the reason I decided to run for council was I wanted to be able to use my brain a little bit differently than I was as a stay-at-home mom. So that 2007 to 2008 timeframe was really the first time in my adult life that I hadn't worked. And I just found this sort of draw and pull to sort of expanding my brain. And we had lived in Gilbert for about 3 years at that point. And I didn't have anything negative to say. I mean, we moved to the community because we wanted to be there, and that's where we wanted to raise our kids. But I didn't see anything I didn't like. But I looked at the current makeup of the council while I was folding laundry, because we didn't have TV then either, and streaming wasn't big yet. And so I was folding laundry, watching what at the time was Channel 11, which was like the public access channel. And I looked at the current makeup of the council at that time and saw that there really wasn't anybody representative of my demographic or age group. And so I grew up in a household where why not was kind of the attitude. Our other family motto was get over it. So you had 2 schools of thought. And so there really wasn't anything I felt like I couldn't do. My mom used to teach raising children with self-esteem, and my siblings and I sort of joke that she probably swung a little too hard on that one. And now we've all ended up in various leadership positions in whatever communities we're in. But we believed that we could do good. We believed that we could contribute if we just sort of rolled up our sleeves to do it. So I ran for office and didn't know what I was doing, and it kind of made it fun. And then I won. And then the day after I won, I woke up in the morning and I totally cried because I thought, I actually don't know how to do this job either. I didn't really know how to run a campaign, and now I don't know how to do this job.
So had you considered like a what if this works type question?
No, I hadn't. And that was part of the like sort of aftermath of like,
That is
I really didn't think everyone told me I wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
Because I had never run for office and I hadn't been on any boards or commissions. So everyone told me like, you got to do it a couple times before you get it right. So I was surprised.
Yeah.
Excited, but surprised.
That's wild.
Okay. So city council.
8 years on city council.
And then.
And about a year before my last term or my last year was up, the mayor at the time, incredible man, one of the best leaders that I know, named John Lewis, came to me and said, I'm not going to run again. And I'd really like it if you ran for mayor. And I said, absolutely not. Thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
Move along to the next candidate, please. But he was persistent and very, very supportive. And I had a daughter while I was a council member. So she was only about 4 at the time and just about to start kindergarten when I finally agreed to do it. But the catalyst, and I think the shift there was, he was an incredible leader that probably put 80 hours a week into being the mayor of our community. He showed up to everything. He was just, gifted leader.
Yeah.
And the way and where my family was, there was no way that I could contribute in the way that he contributed. So the shift from the time that I said absolutely not to, okay, let's do it, was me sort of evolving my own lens, my own vision for how I could lead in a way that worked for me and my family, and still meet the needs of the community, which was obviously a huge component.
Yeah.
So
Man.
So when you say tailoring your leadership style by necessity, you really mean by necessity. Because
Absolutely.
you had 4 small children at home while you were the mayor.
Right.
That's wild.
Yes. And I thought it would get easier as they got older, and it got harder as they got older, not
And
easier.
why do you think about that? Or what? Pardon. Why do you think that is?
I think that kids are very, very aware. And so I'll give you a really fun, for example. My oldest son came home from school, and he was mad at me, really mad at me. And I said, "What's going on? Like, you voted you voted against the fireworks in our community, and I want fireworks."
That's awesome.
So he had heard somewhere at school that there
Sure.
was a fireworks something, and your
Yeah.
mom voted on it.
Dude, your
and-
mom ruined 4th of July this year.
Yeah. She's so unpatriotic. All we were doing was adopting the state law. We didn't actually get to decide. It was a whole
Right.
really procedural thing more than anything. But he hadn't gotten quite all of the information,
Sure.
and he was mad.
Love that.
There were a series of things. There's a lot of pressure on families when their parents are in the public eye.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I really, really am sensitive to that. So anytime someone says, "Will you ever run for anything ever again?" I'm like, never while my kids are young. It doesn't mean other people can't do
Sure.
it, but it became where it interfered with my relationship with my kids.
Sure.
And it wasn't just the time factor. It was really about some of the harder conversations that existed within the community that they felt pressure by.
Wow. So you go from being mayor to your next career move,
Right.
which was that directly into CEO, or was there some
There was a little bit of a gap
movement in that space?
there, not long, because I had to make a plan. I was in a new position where I needed to be the breadwinner for my family. And that shifted things quite a bit as far as, I don't know if you guys know this, but mayors actually don't make money.
I was aware of that. Yeah, I did some Googling.
Excuse me.
I was curious if you were like getting loaded while you were mayor. But I guess
Mayors
not.
secretly get paid
Yeah.
ridiculous amounts of money.
One of my kids asked me, "How much do you get paid as mayor?" Somebody at my school said, "You must be really rich." And I had him do the word problem because that's an opportunity for teaching. And he did all the math and he looked at me. He's like, "Mom, I make more money than you when I babysit for the neighbors." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, you do."
This is problematic.
Yeah.
You
So my family's financial needs shifted quite a bit, and
Totally.
I was in a position where I needed to go. Also, it was 2020, so let's rewind the clock.
Something happened that year.
There was a lot going on that
Yeah, I
year,
can't remember.
particularly in local government, and it made it very, very difficult to balance another job and being the mayor. And there were just so many needs. So I ended up actually resigning a few months early from my term. I still served the full 4 years because I took over for the previous mayor because he had also resigned for financial reasons.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important to note that anytime anybody in the community says to any elected official, "I pay your salary, and therefore I can tell you whatever it is I'm really thinking. I
Sure.
want you to know you can have your dollar back."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because time and money and value doesn't always sort of align in that scenario. So yeah, CEO. Started a little tiny firm. We call it sort of the Swiss Army knife of public affairs firms, where we're able to really come in and if you need a strategy, if you need a comms plan, if there's a government angle, if there is a need to build a coalition, we find ourselves sort of in the intersection of politics, of business, and then also of strategy and how to get things done.
Can you share about one of the favorite projects that you've had? Is it all super
Yeah,
high
we
top
don't
secret respect for
advertise
your
our clients.
Sure.
It's always their story to tell and not ours. So we're just cautious about doing that. But we've had a lot of fun. And one thing that I know for sure about being an entrepreneur and leading, a small team, there's 9 of us women now in our firm, all female firm. But
obviously we're interviewing.
This actually, that's the entire getting you on the podcast
Yeah, I mean-
is our attempt to interview to join your team.
Potentially the first males on the team. But that's fine. We can talk about that after the cameras are off.
Sure, here's my resume.
Yeah, she's seen enough, Brad. She's seen enough.
I'll give you
I'm sure we wouldn't make it. We won't
the
make the
email
cut.
address the info at.
Yeah, info out that will never get read.
Misspell a little,
Yeah.
adds a Z instead of the S at the end.
There you go.
Mm.
Okay, so when I think about the role that you're in, something that comes to mind for me is this idea of like, our leaders born or made? And I love asking this to leaders, because I think the answer oftentimes is like both and, right? But when you look back at your past, and you couldn't have known what future you were coming into, right?
Right.
Were you always a leader? Were you born with these leadership competencies and capacities, or were they forged into you through your experiences? Like, how would you answer that?
You know, super interesting. I have really, really talented siblings. I'm number 2 of 4, and they can play music, and they can do art, and they can play sports, and they've sort of done all of the things. I, on the other hand, was often referred to as bossy and talked too much. And I think what that means for small girls, that meant that I probably had an affinity towards. My skill set was never one that, my gifts and talents were never ones that were celebrated as a child. I'm really good at organizing drawers, which is really cool. Your mom thinks it's really great that your room is always clean and orderly, but it's not necessarily something that you can sort of show off. You know, it doesn't.
Especially grown up, there's no class in high school that you're like,
translate on the drive.
yeah,
like
or
I got an
competition
A,
team,
and I didn't have to work hard.
Yeah.
Like it just came naturally to me. There wasn't that class, and so I think that I probably had skill. I know that I have skills and I have gifts in this space, but it's just like anything where I needed to use them and I needed to refine them, and I still do every day. I mean, I literally learn something new about myself and about leading people every single day. This is a lifelong pursuit. I will never be a perfected anything. I don't actually believe in such elusive aspirations anyway, but I get to practice, and people give me grace to do that. And I've always been grateful for the patience that people have as I am learning and growing every day.
I love that. When you said that, I thought of Liam Neeson, and when he says, "Hey, I have a particular set of skills." You ever watch any of those Taken movies?
Yes.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, watch out.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of skills
Those
these
aren't my
are.
skills either,
No,
actually. Those
right?
would be celebrated in some circles.
Right.
Mine
Again,
not so
and I
much.
think you bring up a really fascinating point, which is we celebrate in particular skills that people have. And-
Visible.
right,
Yeah.
very visible, tangible ones,
Right.
right? Whether it's music or sports or public speaking, there's this whole set of skills that we would deem as culture as like, hey, people that are successful have this set of skills. And if you don't have that set of skills, well, then that's not going to be you.
Right.
And you have done a fantastic job in a lot of different areas of life of flipping that on its head. As we'd say in the Midwest, little kitty wampus. You know, you take it and you just flip it over.
This is South Dakota.
South
You got
Dakota
a
talk.
South
right
Dakota
there.
coming
yeah,
out,
a
man.
little
I
South
like that.
Dakota, yeah. But I think that's really neat. Like you did that, you talked about it earlier with your parenting style of like, it wasn't going to work for me. So I did it. I tailored my parenting style to what worked for me. And then same thing here. You knew as a child, to whatever extent you could, or a younger Jen, right, that you could organize the heck out of a drawer, right, and solve those kind of problems. And then you have been incredibly successful doing that in life now. I just think that's really cool. I hope our listeners hear that, because I don't know, for me, often I always feel maybe ashamed, or like my set of skills aren't as good as maybe somebody else's, rather than if you embrace, like Jen really embraced Jen in what I call her Jen-ness, like just the essence of who you are. And then that Jen can shine.
So to your point, when I've spoken to youth, which I've done for years and years, right? You get called in as the mayor, or as, you know, whatever it is, called in to speak. I am very quick to tell every single group of youth that you have a combination of gifts, talents, skills, abilities, and experiences that has never nor will ever be replicated in this world. And if that's what you have, can you lean into that? I mean, how often are we told, gosh, you're really good at math, but you're not good at language. Like, lean into math then. Like,
Totally.
don't spend any extra time and energy. I mean, speak it, text it.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's a tool for that now too. Like this next generation of youth, and I hope they see it, and I hope we instill it in them before it's too late. That can we just get you to lean into your strengths? We've got tools to give you backup on things that maybe you're not as great at, or maybe you feel less, you have less aptitude for. Can we just lean on what we're good at?
Yeah.
I was with a group of women leaders. We were meeting in Chicago. I have been really privileged to have this like national network of leaders, a lot of local leaders, but kind of from all shapes and walks of life. And we were talking about the skill of negotiation and how women predominantly haven't been taught how to negotiate, that there are some that are really, really good at it. And they were like, how can we, teach women how to negotiate better? And I remember sitting there going, I don't want to learn how to negotiate better. But can we normalize having that woman who's really good at negotiate on my behalf?
Yeah.
I don't need necessarily another skill set. I need to lean into the ones that I have. It doesn't mean that I won't pursue. I use this example too, like, how often do I need a graphic designer? A lot. How long would it take me to teach myself? Could I do it? Sure.
Yeah.
But how long would it take me to be a really good graphic designer that could like spit out what I need?
Yeah.
Like, no, go find the expert graphic designer. I don't want to be a lawyer. I could be a lawyer. I don't want to be. So let me go hire the best lawyer that I can and lean into their gifts and talents, skills, and abilities.
Yeah, and I think that is such an excellent observation about what makes leaders different from people who don't embrace leadership. The idea that, when I worked, I had a little stint in private equity, and we would oftentimes talk about other people's money, right? With leadership, where we get results through other people's time, right? Other people's value, other people's gifts, strengths, and the things that you listed. And so I think it's such a powerful differentiator from a leader who sees the value that other people bring and chooses intentionally to guard their weaknesses and offset their weaknesses with the strengths of
Absolutely.
others.
Yeah. And then celebrates them.
Totally.
Like I go back to, I've never done anything alone.
Such
ever.
gratitude, right?
Yeah.
For the things that other people bring to you that you could otherwise, not that you couldn't figure it out, but that you don't have to, because they are.
And in effect, if I try, let's say that I lean into the weakness that I have, I'm actually doing a disservice to the person whose gift that is.
Wow.
Like, what a gift if I can say, I see this in you and I want to draw it out. It's that whole concept of multipliers, which is another great book that I really love. And it's Liz Wiseman. How can I like multiply your effort as your leader? If I'm put in a position, if I'm privileged enough to be put in a position to lead you, how can I draw out the very best in you? Because you're going to feel good, the team's going to work better, the outcomes are going to be better, and then comprehensively we meet more needs, which is really the point.
And leaders have to do that for themselves too. One of the challenges I think too is like, hey, we have, a lot of times we say, hey, this is the way that we should lead. Like, this is the way we should lead people. And what works for one person, and one person can be really successful, doesn't necessarily work for every leader.
Yeah.
So at the same time that you're trying to draw that out of those that are following you, you have to draw that out of yourself, right? And not put yourself in a box that goes like, okay, if I try and lead like Jen, it's just not going to work. Like, there may be things that I can learn from you, and then I got to figure out how does Taylor take whatever I learned, which is why we kind of wanted to do this as more of a buffet style than it is, this is how you lead.
Right.
Because in a buffet, you can go, I'm good at buffets. I can go in there and I can take, come on. Yeah, a little Golden Corral. You ever been to Golden Corral?
Yeah, hometown buffet in Chandler where I grew up, man. There was a hometown buffet.
Yeah.
Warner and Alma School.
We used to do spring buffet in high school. I feel bad for it. It's a, nice little Chinese spot. And me and my buddies would go, I think we'd just eat them. It was like $7 back in the day, which was a lot in like 2004. But man, we got our money's worth,
Yeah, I just feel bad for your body.
Yeah, me too. Still to this day. But I could take whatever worked, right? And I think that as leaders, we need to do the same.
Yeah.
Like, we need to lead our selves the way that we're trying to lead our team, which you're a great example of that, of going like, okay, what's the best way for me to lead?
Right.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is hear, empathize, understand, make sure that that person feels valued and loved,
Right.
and then figure out what their unique contribution is,
Right.
and then help them go do that, right? Which,
If you could define leadership for our listeners, how would you define it?
I think just in the way that we have, which is leadership is drawing the best of those around you, and ensuring that they are heard, seen, and valued. It all comes down to people. I mean, leadership is about people. It's about needs being met and solutions to be had. We get in our own way so much as individuals.
So true.
I love the idea that I can surround myself with people who see different sides. I never want a total and complete agreement around any table I ever sit in. I really, really want, and sometimes I think also as a leader, it's your job to have uncomfortable conversations. It's your job to hold space and to even hold tension long enough for people to move.
Can you be a co-host on this podcast? You are literally saying what we think about. I feel like everything that we've talked about and tried to facilitate with guests such as yourself was said so well in that sentence. What is it like for you though, Jen, when you're the one holding tension between relationships? And we'll get to slow burn in a minute, but like when you have someone who's highly task oriented and just all they want to do is get it done every day at the expense of, we'll solve the relationships later. Let's just go win the new client, get the project done, grow the revenue, increase the profit, versus think about the coziest, coolest, sweetest, kindest, most tender employee on your team who just wants to be with people and there's just shows up to hang out and smile.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
So
What's it like to be you in that moment?
Yeah, we can categorize this as somebody who's really transaction-based or someone who's relationship-based, right? The transaction-based is generally set upon the premise that in order to have value, I have to be doing. I have to get something done. I have to show progress, right?
Totally.
Whereas the relationship-based sort of approach is I get to build on everything that I do. I get to build and bring out the best in people. I get to see them grow, right? And if you know what you're dealing with, so I always am like, okay, reveal yourself early.
Yeah, that's good.
That's my favorite part about really, and I almost call it speed dating with some of our clients, because it's like, okay, I got to learn real quick, what you value and how you value it, because I can meet you there. That's my job as a leader, is to meet you where you are. But that also means that as I'm holding tension, and I do have somebody who might be relationship-based versus transaction-based,
Totally.
where can I help them meet in the middle? Where does the transaction overlap with relationship? Or where does the relationship actually make the transaction happen?
Wow.
So I would argue you really have to just sort of know what you're working with, know what the reward is for each individual, and then do what you can to meet those needs. I've worked on a lot of really dysfunctional teams. I mean, none of my team, no team is perfect, right? So
Totally not.
we've all worked on really dysfunctional teams. And I think the ultimate goal is the vision. When you have an agreed upon vision, an agreed upon objective, we can get there in all sorts of ways.
It's so good. And isn't it amazing how that kind of guiding light, that North Star, true north, it allows the opportunity for us to care less and less about the things that we disagree on, right? Whether it's, for you, all kinds of political disagreements taking place as mayor, but we all can agree that we want this economic policy to happen, or that we want this new business to come into the city, or we want this important development that'll breathe new life into our overall civic life to happen. It's probably same in your company day in and day out. The team's like, no, I want to go left, I want to go right. Well, we can go either way ultimately, as long as we're oriented towards true north.
Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful way of framing that.
Yeah. And if you talk about small things as a leader, I find that it's easy to disagree, right? You talk about the little things, like you want to talk about going right or left, like people are going to disagree. But if you talk about the overarching vision, we want our communities to be clean. We want our communities to be safe. We want our communities to be family friendly. We want our communities to have economic development opportunities. We want to be able to live, work, and play within our community. There's nobody really that would disagree with those things.
Sure.
Now, how we get there is where all the disagreement will come. And again, bringing everybody back to the solution.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, keeping people focused on the vision or the why behind what we're doing and not the what and the how.
Right.
I think that's a really good distinguish, like that can be our practicality corner or one of them for the day. Because I think it's easy.
Jingle.
Ding, 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 ding. We actually have a jingle. It's not here. I wish that it was in this room with us.
I don't know. We need like a button.
I need like a practicality fairy, and I could just hold her up and she'd just appear on my hand. That wouldn't be very good for our Spotify listeners. Jesus, can we do that? We can do it.
Can we cut
Here you go, Jesus.
We're going to cut this.
Practicality fairy. Yeah, Jesus loves it. But I like that because I think that it's one thing to say, hey, like we want to stay focused on the vision. It's another thing to actually execute, right? And the execution of that is super important. And so really practically and tangibly for our leaders that are out there, keeping those conversations on the broader vision, the why, the heart behind it, rather than that, hey, how are we actually going to go execute this?
Right.
Which those are conversations that need to be had too. But, you know, timing and content are so important.
And that's when you start looking to your experts in my case, in the departments. Planning's going to have a different approach than economic development. That's going to have a different approach than public works. It's going to have a different. So all of the groups of individuals that you have working towards that vision, they all have a job to do. It is not my job to go tell public works how to do their job.
Right.
I have zero business going and telling anybody how to build a water treatment facility or, you know, engineering a street. Like I have zero skill sets of like, let the people do their jobs. Let them do their good work. You painted the picture. You said, here's what we want. Here's ultimately how we would love to, you know, what we would love the outcome to be.
Yeah.
Tell us how in your individual lanes, with your skill sets, with your gifts, talents, skills, abilities, and experiences, you see your part in making that happen.
I love the way you frame that.
What do we do as leaders when we're building consensus, we're orienting around, you know, our true north, and we're getting stuck with either relationships people who just cannot get with the program and you know get to winning, or we're dealing with people who are like, man, you're totally crushing this person over here because you're so results focused.
We steamroll them. I'm just kidding. We don't
like,
steamroll them.
There we go. I love that. I'm an oldest, so I like to steamroll. That's great. Just my way or the highway.
Wow. She surprises us yet again.
No, I'm totally teasing in that because that actually is a temporary solution that you see a lot of leaders employ.
So effective at getting things done, and I see it constantly with my clients, like louder, say it stronger, be more demeaning, passive aggressive. I mean, I could keep going, but that's not the solution. How have you navigated it? How do you teach your employees and your clients to navigate it?
A couple different things. First, and I made this mistake, and I have a great example of making this mistake, which is how I learned all my good lessons. You have to
share names, details. We love it. Just go. We do that all.
There's a black book somewhere.
Yeah.
You really need to know the style of the person that you're working with, and this is what I would call like leadership 400 level class, which is. Does your organization do personality tests? Have you studied them? Do you understand how you're going to be more effective speaking to a particular individual with a certain personality? I'll give you, for example, we did a DISC assessment early on. I think I was still a council member, but we did it as part of our strategic retreat with all of the executive leadership while I was on council. And there was a particular incident that I remember like it was yesterday. I remember very little of being on council or mayor. Like it's like Parks and Rec episodes. Like I blocked out a lot of it. There were some intense moments, but I remember this acutely because it was such a good lesson for me. But I was driving to Tucson, still remember where I was, even on Highway 10 down to Tucson. And I had called our public works director, and I I uncharacteristically was over the top angry. I let him know how disappointed I was in how he was handling a particular situation, and I just let him have it. I get off the phone, and I had a moment of, that was not the best version of you, Jenn, and I didn't feel good about the conversation. And I really, like, it started to eat away at me the way that I had behaved as a leader. And I had in the front seat the DISC assessments from our team. Like, I had everybody's name and like their numbers and card. Like, I'm sure this was very safe driving. So I pulled out the card and I looked to see what his DISC assessment was, and realized as I'm looking at his DISC assessment that I basically said everything he needed to hear to not ever do good work for me ever again. I had said all of the wrong things in order to be most effective with him. So I called him back. And to his credit, he actually picked up the phone. I don't know that I would have if I saw my name on caller ID again. And all I could say was, I am so sorry. I realize, like, I don't feel good about that conversation. That was so not the best version of me. I hope you can forgive me. Can we start over? And it was one of those moments where I was like, know who you're working with. Like, first of all, no one responds. No one's going to respond well to that sort of behavior. But second of all, I said all the wrong things to get the outcome that I wanted. And I think about this as, okay, am I being manipulative by trying to understand somebody's like background or what they hear and see?
Sure.
Like, no, legitimately, it's not just about them doing what I want them to do. It's about communicating so that they can hear me.
Totally.
And that is a completely different approach than just get what, to our point, steamrolling or getting him and whomever to do whatever we need them to do. So be aware of your blind spots, but when all else fails, go do some deep dives on who it is that you're working with and what matters to them and what resonates with them and what they deeply care about. When was the last time you had, a face-to-face conversation with somebody that maybe you've been at odds with, where you're not talking about any problems, you're just getting to know them. You're just wanting to understand the psychology of, what makes them tick and what lights them up and what, shuts them down. So I've learned a lot over the years about that specific thing. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to really, really knowing and loving the people that you work with, seeing them for the value that they innately have.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good answer.
Solid.
And hey, thank you. The honesty and transparency of like just being like, hey, here's a mistake that I made, and the willingness to share that.
So many mistakes, you guys.
But it's so great. I mean, I hope our listeners hear that, because one of the things I say is, a good leader isn't one that doesn't make mistakes. A good or great leader is just one that makes the mistake right when they do make a mistake.
Yeah.
And you did that. And I think that course correction in you, it's like, man, that's amazing, because all of us have flown off the hinges, gotten pissed, done something, been like, oh crap, like the heck. But the ability to go, okay, now let me go back to remembering, oh yeah, the DISC assessment. What was this person like? And it is super easy to do a DISC assessment and rarely revisit it. And I think oftentimes these are supposed to be tools in our toolbox, right? And we just kind of leave them there. We pull them off and we're like, hey, the DISC assessment is going to solve all of our company issues, and it's really cool. But it's like a hammer that we pull out and we look at it and we're like, man, this is a really good tool. And then we hang it up and it gets dusty and we forget. Like Brad and I did one back in our days. I don't know if you remember. And the differences between like our boss at the time, who was a D, and I am not, like an I. And we had a gal on our staff. She just said, hey, I want you both to tell a story. And it was one of those funny moments where he's like about what? And I'm like, I'll tell you any story you want. Just give me 5 minutes. But the differences between us.
You have a lot of stories.
I do. I've got a lot of stories.
Yeah, you can tell a story to yourself.
I do quite frequently. My wife is very annoyed with it.
Okay.
But the differences between us and the way that we would actually be able to communicate well is really important to understand. And the ability to go, hey, I actually care about my team enough to care about the person and the individual. And yes, it could be partially manipulative in that of like, I want to get this end result, so I'm going to know the person. But the other part is like, also you all are trying to work towards the same goal.
Right.
And then you're trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Right.
The only other thing I was going to say is I love the idea you're saying at the end of, I wish more people in companies, and people light me up, I think, on YouTube sometimes and say, this is a terrible idea, just like checked in and cared on people.
Mm-hmm.
Like for no other reason than you were just like, you know what, maybe I should just text my boss today and be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. How you doing? Like care about the person more than even the end result that we want to get. Like just take a minute and pick up the phone. So people are always commenting like, that job's just a job, you know, all these kind of things. And I would say, yes, that is true. And you can get far more out of your team and your leadership and those around you if you create a culture that just honestly cares about each other.
Well, it's really naive to think that what we do outside of the four walls of an office or, you know, the computer screen isn't making a difference in the way that we show up.
Yeah.
We are holistic individuals, and everything I do, I'm actually really good at compartmentalizing. It's a short-term strategy to stay focused on a goal. It is not a long-term strategy. It will backfire on you. So if you have people that are working for you or with you, and they are compartmentalizing their personal life from their work life, that is not long-term sustainable. There will be an outcome from that effort, and I think as safe as you can make it, recognizing that there are things that are appropriate and not appropriate. I don't have the skill set to help, you know, somebody get the therapy they need, but I can refer them to a therapist. I don't have to fill that role, right? And so, like, just knowing the people, I think it makes a huge difference.
So good.
There's another resource we refer to often, Jen. It's called The Powerful Engagement, and it's kind of an older book, but I feel like it's still very relevant. And one of the things that author does is he kind of tells a story about a particular guy in this book as an example, and all of the personal factors that, you know, this individual is choosing to engage in are ultimately contributing to like his poor performance. It has nothing to do with the work environment. It has nothing to do with, you know, the circumstances around his clientele. He's in a sales job or sales role in his job. And he's basically just telling the story of one of his clients who was sabotaging himself with personal decisions and creating a bunch of terrible work outcomes. And so I think it is just good psychology. It's just good mental health to do things that demonstrate care for others. Like, and if we could reciprocate that in companies, I think then we have a transformation on our hands.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you've said, hey, you know, we can change the world by changing the way we lead, right?
Absolutely.
If more people would lead that way out of a place of like kindness, empathy, understanding, rather than steamrolling. Because one of them, truthfully, the reason steamrolling works is it gets results. It can get results very quickly. It just may not necessarily be sustainable, right? The other way is kind of slow because I got to actually care. I got to actually put in some effort. But I do think that
steamrolling destroys trust. And trust is the linchpin of leadership,
it's
right?
the currency.
Exactly right.
So can take, you know, years to gain and seconds to lose.
That's right.
And you see it happen all the time, especially in the public sector.
100%.
Yeah.
It's well said.
And we actually worked through an interview with a guy named Corey Shearer who wrote a book called Trust Factor. Oh yeah, sorry, Trust Gap.
Yeah.
Trust Factor is a different book. You should check that one out too. Trust Gap. And one of the things that we did was we read some of the stats from his book about public opinion on government and about the erosion of trust in all forms of institutions, but particularly government. And I totally agree with the statement you made. Trust is ultimately like the currency of relationships. It's not money, although that's super important. It's not even time, although time really matters. But when you trust someone, time and money follow so easily. And when you don't trust someone, you're like, I don't know about giving you my time. I'm definitely not giving you my money.
Right.
So,
and I'm definitely not going to give you my best ideas or my best work or my best, the best versions of me. I'm going to save those for people that have that trust. Yeah. I see it. You see it all the time in government. And it's really, really unfortunate. It's so hard now to run for office. It's it's harder than it was when I ran, for sure. 2009, 2012, 2016, you think about where we are now as a country, even just 8 years. And it's really difficult to run for office, which means it only attracts a certain segment of the population who generally see themselves as the ones that can come and save the world.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it is not, saving the world is never going to be done by the people with titles. It's always going to be done by the people who are leading in quiet ways.
You know what's fascinating?
Powerful.
As you said that, I was just thinking, I was like, you're right. There's lower and lower trust for government. And in my head, I'm blaming the government for that. And truthfully, then did you guys ever listen to the podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill? It was a fascinating deal on this church up in Washington and the pastor there. And basically there's tons of challenges and issues, but the podcast was interesting because it framed it up to not blame this one person, but actually blame the entire congregation and say, actually, as a culture of Christianity, we've created a culture where that's the only person that could really be successful there. And so we want to blame, like in this case, I want to blame government, but when I step back and look at it, I'm like, no, that's the American people right there. Sorry, all you listeners. We have international listeners too, so it's not your fault.
Singapore, what up?
What up? Yeah, but anyways, that was just a fascinating side note to, as I was thinking about it, is like, wow, the pressure that you talked about too of like having kids and being in the public eye and like all those kind of things. Brad talked about this on a different episode of how we put people on these pedestals and then we just kind of crucify them when they fall. But that is what often we want as a culture. We like
love
people
it.
falling.
Yeah, we love it when people fail.
Yeah.
We love to get them there, get them the money that the clothes, celebrity status, all that, and then we love it even more
When they fall hard.
When they fail.
I think in some ways it makes our individual flaws feel less vulnerable when we see somebody else's flaws. So I think it's a natural human response to be like, see, they're flawed too.
Yep.
So that means that I'm not less
100%.
than.
Look, they're just like me.
Right. How about instead as we just always see them as like us?
Yeah.
How about we view everybody as my equal? I had that experience once with, there was a conversation around homelessness in the Valley. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm 2 choices away from being homeless myself. Like at any given time, it doesn't even matter. Like if you think about it, like their choices might have been different than mine.
Yeah.
But that also could have been me.
Yeah.
And so I just think creating that sort of leveling influence, like I don't have some of the same challenges that they have. I have different challenges. How will I respond to those in a way that keeps me in an awareness that I am an equal to?
Yeah, that's so good.
I think what that posture also creates an opportunity for, an opening for, is that I can make a difference as a leader, even if I'm not XYZ, even if I don't have that kind of scale or scope of influence, such as a mayor or another elected official or the CEO of an organization. You can be a stay-at-home mom and you're leading your children, you're leading your spouse. You can be an individual contributor who's working in a factory on an assembly line, and you can model great, excellent work at what you do. And so leadership takes all of these different forms.
Well, how many times have any of us said, somebody should do something about that?
Yeah.
Guess who this somebody is, you guys? Like,
Oh,
it doesn't take a title. It doesn't take, in most cases, it doesn't take financial resources, but it does have to be your passion, right? I'm a firm believer in like, I can do a lot. I can't do everything. And I need to limit what I attempt to do to those things that I have passion for.
Yeah.
But if everybody lived into that, like if everybody thought like, I can do something about that. I feel strongly about that. I can do something about that.
Yeah.
Therein lies real change.
Totally. 100%. I think going after your passions and what you're saying, hey, I'm going to, I can do something about that or go after it. And the other thing that we were talking about just a minute ago reminded me of a statement or a question that radically changed my life. And it was, who am I to think that if I lived the same set of life experiences as somebody else, that I would make a better choice than they have made?
Yeah.
That radically rocked my world, because that is almost always when I see government officials making poor choices rock stars making poor choices, whoever it is on TV. I never would think this consciously, but the thought is, man, if I was there, I would never have done that.
Right.
Yeah.
And truthfully, if I walked any of those, like, who am I to think that I would make better choices? I might make worse choices.
Yeah.
Totally.
If I were in their shoes, I might make terrible choices. So I think if we had that, and that applies not just on a big scale, but like in our companies with the people that we're leading, like,
Right.
hey, who am I to think that if I had their set of circumstances that I would make a better choice? That to me has helped me come from a place of like empathy rather than judgment. And then I feel like we can connect.
Right. There's a great technique that I've used too that really is along those exact same lines. And it really comes down to, I wonder what is going on in that person's life that's making them show up in not the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody screaming at a server, or you witness a mom having a moment of like total despair with her child in a public place, like
Costco, maybe.
yes,
Costco.
yeah, when there's a meltdown holding a
Listen,
baby.
I'm just
at
glad that you
Costco.
didn't say you were at Sam's Club because then we would have had a whole other.
Yeah, we've got a battle between Costco and Sam's Club.
There's a
going
big,
on.
I'm sure the debate continues. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I just think, gosh, we really don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah.
We really don't know.
Yeah.
And I've had that experience many times in my own life where I've had to show up in a leadership capacity or as the best that I can possibly do in the moment, and known, that I was carrying some pretty heavy burdens in that time. And really, again, really grateful for people who gave me grace when I probably, didn't deserve it, or it wasn't obvious as to why I needed it.
Yeah. So good. We probably
Slow burn.
I know. Do we have time? Should we do it?
You have an
Let's do
extra
it.
15 minutes? Yeah.
Let's go.
You got to explain it. You explain it better than I do.
I do a lot of things better than you do, Brad.
Well,
We
Gifts,
can't
talent,
name
skills,
them.
abilities, and experience.
yeah.
Bifurcated.
Yes, thank you. In this realm,
Whatever.
I just like to say that I do things better than. Okay, so slow burn. So the story behind this game, which maybe we'll get a little background music going right now too. I like our music. Brad hates it. Is that we have a set of paradoxes basically that we're going to give. It goes back to our first episode. Brad was very mean to me, didn't tell me what he was going to do. He's going to give you two things that are really hard.
Okay.
And rock in a hard place, you got to choose one.
Okay.
We call it slow burn because it's supposed to happen quick, but really it's kind of a slow burn. So you can choose one or the other, but you have to choose.
You have to choose.
You got to choose. And then you get like 30 seconds to kind of explain like,
Why?
okay, here's why.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, you can just say, it's this one, move on. But usually people want to take a
Okay.
minute to explain it. So
Defend their answer.
yeah, to give them a little credibility. So you want to,
And if something's ambiguous, ask Taylor for clarity.
Okay.
yeah, definitely ask me for clarity. Thanks for that.
Got you. Okay. First one, being or doing? What's more important in leadership, being or doing?
Doing. I think you gotta be willing to be in the trenches with your people. No job too small. Nothing beneath me. I used to very often volunteer to clean the bathrooms at church.
Yeah, that's great.
It's a great job.
It is.
It gets done really fast. I know what the standard is.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
No one's usually critical of my cleaning skills. I'm pretty thorough.
No one's like,
just grateful.
I'll volunteer to take that over from you, Jen.
Yeah.
Nobody said
I,
that.
I really believe in, even though that has to be the role you don't take sometimes as a leader, sometimes you can't be the name tag person and lead the meeting. But I'm more than happy to do alongside my people.
I love it. Relationships or results?
Relationships, always. People will outlast any sort of outcome ever. I can't tell you how many times over the last 20 years I've been on an opposing side with someone and then been on the same side as them.
Yes. Depending on the issue, right?
Right. You never, you never know. And so relationships will always mean more to me.
Values or vision?
Values are the foundation of vision, I think. So I think I'd go with values. There's a whole values exercise that's really, really cool to do, where you're essentially outlining what your top 5 values are. And it's not that they ever go away, but I found that over the years I add to that list as to what's most important to me. And what I value the most out of anything is total transparency and honesty at this stage in my life. The radical type of honesty that sometimes stings a little bit, but that helps me see better and do better.
You're talking about the kind of honesty that my wife Becca gives me that I don't want.
Delivery matters.
Can you tone that honesty down a little bit?
Yeah.
That honesty
say the
hurts
truth,
like
if you could
crazy right now.
Not say it. That would we would be happier here.
It's hard to say, and I've talked to, this has been a sort of a recent, we tell people what we think they want to hear because we want to control how they see us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I can let go of trying to control how others see me, I will inevitably deliver truth, not only in a more compassionate, but in a much more authentic way, true to the way I see it.
Here's what's crazy is like, I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm guilty of it. So like, I'll go first. Like I'm guilty of that.
You're in good company.
We don't realize though, in the moment of doing that, like how actually dark and manipulative it is. Like it's really sad and not okay that I lie sometimes in effort to control someone having a positive opinion about me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't think in the moment, okay, I'm gonna lie to Jen right now and I'm gonna kind of control this narrative, but that's what I do. And then it creates total chaos down the line in my relationship because then Jen doesn't actually know who I am. She knows a version of me that I've presented to her in order to make sure that she likes me or respects me or agrees with me or whatever.
Right. And it's so hard. It also, and I'm learning this, so I'm in process always. But it also means that you don't trust the other person very much to tell them a component. You don't trust the way that they will respond to you will be in a way that is accepting and loving. Mm-hmm. And I really think we need to give people more of the benefit of the doubt in that space. Like, if you really saw me, if you really saw all the flaws, would you still love me? Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to when we're telling these lies. I mean, I think we're doing it, again, in a way to protect ourselves.
Totally. We don't mean to do it that way.
Will you still love me, even in the flawed versions of myself?
And here's why I want to sign up for what you're selling, right? And here's why I want to be your client now, because I know that you're actually going to advocate for my good, and you're not going to be a consultant or an advisor who is just trying to stay on retainer, right? And that's the fear, that's the danger, right?
I fire myself on behalf of clients all the time, where I'll say, hey, I've gotten you to this point. Yep. At this point, it's really up to you. Here's all the tools that you'll need. Mm-hmm. Call me if you want help implementing those, but I've gotten you to exactly where I think I can get you, and we're gonna back out of this now. Yeah. And if you wanna keep us on, you can, but it's probably a good time.
Yeah, but what a great example of radical transparency. That is ethical consulting, right? That's ethical advising.
It's really, really important. Well, plus I wanna do work that moves the needle. And at some point, the client has to take ownership of the work. Mm. And so if they're not willing to take the next hard steps or to put in the time, energy, and effort they would take to build the relationships that they'll need to move the needle, then I've done all that I can do, and I'm gonna move on and take my time, energy, and resources to a new client. Again, that abundance mentality, not the scarcity mentality that I might not ever have another client again.
Right.
I'm gonna take that to another client, and I'm gonna invest in them to see them get to the next level. Yeah. So it's more of like hey, I've done everything I can, and if you guys won't take it from here, I'm not offended by that at all. I've still done really good work, and I think I've still built a solid relationship, one that I hope will always last. But it's up to you now.
Yeah. No.
This is why we call it slow burn.
Yeah, because here we are.
It's not rapid
We're still
fire.
talking. No, yeah. I mean, my brain is. I could stay right there all day.
I know.
I mean, you know me. I'd love to, because to me, that part is really it actually doesn't feel as dark as it just feels sad. Like, I feel sad for myself and people that like we feel like we need to put whatever version of ourselves out there to be loved, accepted, and
we are missing opportunities for feeling loved.
Yeah, correct. Because then if they do love you, then you continue to draw the conclusion that they love me for this other version.
Yeah.
And that's really hard, because then you build a prison for yourself that looks like that.
Yeah.
Of all these stories that I have put out there. And because this is me. So, I mean, I spent most of my life before I got into recovery just lying and dumb stuff, man, to make people like me. Like, hey, I'm going to tell you guys I had scholarships for sports in college when I didn't have them. Hey, I'm going to tell you I got better grades than I did.
Oh, you lied about that
all
stuff?
the time, man. And not like big lies.
Confess
Just
one
like,
of your
hey,
lies
I got to
to-
see
Confess
her.
one of your recent lies to me.
I don't have to do that on the show, Brad. This is all in the past. I don't currently lie anymore ever. But no, I think that like the current journey, like the journey of humanity and people of like trying to get to that place where we can just be honest and open and becoming, like I like the way you said that. A buddy of mine sent me a graphic. It was a mountain years ago. It said, never stop becoming.
I'm pretty sure that's Michelle Obama book, but
Okay,
Go ahead.
probably. God,
Yeah.
you just keep undermining me here. But but I love it. And like I said, I'm a Donald Miller fan who runs StoryBrand now. He wrote some great books. One of them is Scary Close, which is if you're interested in any of this, that's his journey of intimacy with his good friend Bob Goff, and then his now wife, and the challenges for him in that. And he also wrote a line that I'll never forget. And I actually can't remember the book. It may be Searching for God Knows What or 1,000 Years and a Million Miles. But he said, man, all of humanity wants to be known for who they are and loved anyway. I was like, that's it. That's it. And
Holy
as strange
grail.
as it sounds to kind of make this detour in a leadership podcast, for me and the way that I choose to lead as Taylor, that is the essence of leadership. Is I want everyone that I come in contact with to be seen for for whoever they are. Like whatever they don't want somebody to know about them, you don't have to share it with me, but I'd like to know because you're not weird or strange. Like all those things usually make perfect sense. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And I can sit with you in that. And then I think you can lead people better because you've cared about them. So it's kind of a interesting rabbit hole that we've gone into in the slow burn, but I think it's pretty true.
To your point, I don't think it's a detour in the sense that if we all agree, and I think our listeners would too, that trust is the currency of business.
Yeah.
Trust is the currency of leadership. It's exactly what we should be wrestling with as we think about the kind of cultures that we're trying to set in our companies.
Yeah. And it's messy. You can set a different expectation and culture in your company that is far less messy, that will be cleaner probably on the break and the entire way through. It is harder to work with people that you care about because you care about them. Like that's harder. But I do think the end game, if it is people before profits always, that will net out, even though it's harder. All right, slow burn. We got a couple more.
All right, let's land this plane.
Yep, we'll
Ready.
land it. Recovery or performance?
I think in my old life, I would probably have said performance, and now I say recovery. I think the recovery is, if I'm defining this properly, right? And my brain, performance is you're on the stage, and the recovery is you are back to the sideline, right? Like, the performance is such a small part of the actual work that we do. I think about how many times that people thought that being a mayor was running the meeting, right? Being the mayor is not running the meeting. That's the easiest part of my job, or was, right? The recovery time, the time outside. Somebody once told me, in between meetings, mind the gaps. Leadership is most often shown and displayed in the moments in between meetings.
That's great.
In the conversations that are had off to the side. Not necessarily sort of the public domain.
That's so good.
So
yeah,
it's one of those things that sort of always stayed with me.
80-20 rule there. Even like exercise wise, right? You spend a little bit of your time, exercising, getting stronger, and then you spend most of the time recovering. So that's really well
I'm
said.
also, in my mid 40s now, and I value sleep more than ever. No offense to the people that are new dads.
Me too.
Over there.
I love sleep. I love sleep. I just don't get 2 hours a night right now. I was like, okay, that's not great. 3 hours. I'm like, man, that's a pretty solid night.
Yeah.
Currently. Yeah.
I've had a lot of those years.
Yeah,
I know
sure.
exactly what you're saying.
You put in your time.
Yeah,
Now
you
I'm
put your
like,
reps
Put in your time.
6.5
4 kids.
would be great.
Yeah. Culture or productivity?
I want to say culture. I think that will drive productivity in most cases. I think you have to have people around you who are productive. Think about like being motivated, right? Like I tell my teenagers this all the time. Like if you're waiting to feel motivated, you're going to be waiting for a really long
while.
time,
Such,
maybe forever.
such a true statement.
But if you're surrounded by other people who are focused on an objective,
Yeah.
particularly, you know, in a work setting or a family setting or a school setting, you can feed off of their
Totally.
energy and productivity.
good.
So I would say culture is going to be far more important to me.
Love it. Last one, sales or profits?
I'm not like in a tradition. We're not in like a weird traditional sales. Like I'm not
that's fair.
selling like a product. We're kind of selling us,
Yeah.
right? We're selling our experience and our ability to support and deliver. So, I mean, sales is probably more accurate. Do you guys write your own bios?
we
I think
write
I
them?
wrote both of our bios.
Did you?
I think so.
You mean ChatGPT? Wrote
So
well, I had
which
an
one-
editor called ChatGPT.
Which one was easier to write, your own or Taylor's?
Oh, Taylor's.
So I go back to this all the time, which is it's really, really helpful when someone else sort of sells for you on your behalf, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to that whole negotiation
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which when we write, we like do the framework of our own bios in our team, and then we have each other edit because it definitely sounds better coming out of someone else's mouth than it does coming out of our own.
Super well said.
And so I highly recommend you surround yourself with people who can contribute on your behalf and help you see those things. And that is a sale, like you are selling yourself.
Yeah. That's good.
So I just think that's an important component of it. But let somebody else write your bio.
Will you write my bio?
I'll think about it. I can't make any good. I don't think you want me
every
to
time
write your
I'm
bio.
vulnerable, this is why I undermine him, because when I'm vulnerable, that's what I get.
Our story started off with him telling me not to take a job, that I was going to work together with him, and I have not done anything that he's told me since that day. I actually have done the opposite, and that has been very successful
been
practice
working.
for me.
Again,
Yeah.
reveal who you are early on,
Yeah,
and then
100%.
let people navigate accordingly.
There we go. Oh man, no, this has been fantastic.
Thanks for the opportunity. This is really fun.
Yeah,
Great
no.
job.
So since you won't let us work for you, will you be a co-host on the Daily Leader from time to time?
We'll just
like
have
if
you
we
just-
call you back, will you?
Sure, happy
right.
to.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Do I
tried.
sit right in between you guys, or like?
Yeah. Oh, she could be like a mediator.
I think Taylor was actually looking for something different in this next season of his life anyway. So,
so I'm being replaced.
maybe
That's probably a
Jen
wise
was-
move. That's a good strategic.
I don't
play
think it's
right
the
there.
Daily Leader without both of you. So keep going, keep doing it.
All right. Well, Jen, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Happy to
We're
be here.
super grateful. All of you Daily Leader people out there with the tattoo and everything, get your family to in your head or wherever you put your Daily Leader tattoo. Like, subscribe, do all those things, and we will be back again next week.
Bye, guys.